The most powerful idea in global finance was born not in a bank, but in a bustling Chinese marketplace 1,000 years ago. It all started with a problem: coins, heavy, bulky, and impossible to move across provinces. Merchants were hauling tons of copper just to trade. Then came a radical question: what if money didn't have to be metal at all? That idea would rewrite the financial system and nearly destroy the empire that created it. Let's rewind to the Song dynasty, around the 10th century. China was booming, trade exploded, people were buying silk, tea, ceramics, everything. But as markets grew, coins couldn't keep up. Copper shortages hit. Transportation was slow. Merchants were frustrated. So private traders came up with a hack: promissory notes. Instead of hauling coins, they issued paper slips, certificates of deposit, that promised payment later. These were called jiaozi. At first, it was all about trust. You handed someone a note and they accepted it because they trusted the issuer, kind of like early credit cards, but made of bamboo paper and ink. But here's the first cliff. Once people started trusting the paper more than the coins, the government noticed, and that's when everything changed. In 1023 CE, the Song government took over the system and made it official. They issued the world's first government-backed paper currency, the official jiaozi notes. Each note was limited to a circulation of about 1.26 million strings of cash, roughly $1 billion in today's terms. It worked beautifully, at first. Trade expanded, taxes got easier, and the government could finally control the money supply. The Song economy became one of the most advanced in the world, but what started as innovation was about to turn into the world's first financial disaster. Once you realize you can print money, stopping becomes almost impossible. 1,000 years later, we still haven't learned. Governments printed trillions during recessions and pandemics, calling it stimulus instead of survival. Different tools, same addiction, so the Song kept printing. When wars came, they printed more. When tax revenue ran short, they printed even more. When the rest of the world finally saw it, they couldn't decide if China had found magic or madness. By the time the Mongols invaded and founded the Yuan dynasty in 1271, paper money was everywhere. Marco Polo wrote about it, stunned that a government could just print bark paper, and everyone accepted it as real money. But here's the part he didn't see coming: the collapse. The Yuan rulers launched their own version called Jiao Chao. At first, one note equaled roughly 1 ounce of silver, but with every new batch printed, confidence cracked. In less than 40 years, the value of the yuan note dropped by 95%. Prices exploded. Imagine waking up to find a loaf of bread costs more than your month's wages, and by sunset it's doubled again. Markets filled with the smell of burning paper, merchants torching worthless notes that once bought estates. In tea houses, whispers spread faster than ink. Money was dying. People lost faith fast. By the 1300s, the paper currency had become almost worthless. It was the world's first inflation crisis caused by government printing. Sound familiar? It should, because that same pattern keeps repeating. When paper became worthless, trade collapsed. Silver rushed back as the money of survival. Desperate, the government tried forcing citizens to accept paper, even under penalty of death. It didn't work. That was the second cliff, the moment paper money almost killed the idea of money itself. But the concept didn't die. It spread. Traders along the Silk Road carried the idea west. By the 1600s, European banks started experimenting with notes too. Sweden, England, and later America all borrowed the same invention born in China's markets, and all repeated the same mistake. France printed assignats during its revolution. They collapsed. Germany printed marks in the 1920s. They collapsed. Even the United States printed heavily during wars and recessions, triggering waves of inflation. The Chinese were the first to learn this brutal lesson. When you print more money than your economy can handle, trust disappears faster than ink can dry. Fast forward to today. Not one major currency on Earth is backed by gold, silver, or anything tangible. It's all paper, or more accurately, digits on a screen, backed only by government promise. And here's the wild stat. 92% of global money exists only in digital form. Not coins, not paper, just code. Less than 1/10 of money is physical. The rest are ghosts in code, moving at the speed of trust. The ghosts of China's first paper experiments are still with us. Inflation, currency crises, even the rise of crypto, they're all echoes of the same ancient question the Song dynasty asked 1,000 years ago. What gives money its value, the metal it's made of, or the belief behind it? The answer, of course, is belief, because once people lose belief, even the strongest currency can crumble. That's why central banks today are obsessed with one word: trust. They don't just manage money, they manage belief, and it's the same game the Song and Yuan emperors played, just with faster tech and better PR. Today, governments are piloting central bank digital currencies. China's digital yuan, Europe's digital euro, and the US Fed's FedNow are already being tested. Faster, cheaper, safer, that's the pitch. But if paper money once gave rulers the power to print at will, imagine what happens when money itself becomes pure code. The first paper bills were meant to make life easier, but they ended up proving how fragile money can be when trust breaks. It's not the paper that matters, it's the promise behind it. And that promise, whether printed, mined, or digital, is the foundation of every financial system we've ever built. From copper coins to coded currency, the story hasn't changed, only the tools have. What began in China wasn't just the story of invention, it was the birth of belief. Belief that something worthless could represent everything of value. That belief built empires. It also destroyed them. And every time you check your bank app, you're part of the same story. If you thought paper money changed the world, wait till you see how debt became the most powerful invention in human history, and how that same system now controls your paycheck, your mortgage, and maybe your freedom. Tap the next video, because the next empire won't rise from armies, it'll rise from debt.